If there is one thing that confuses people down to the bone, it is not that evil exists, but that it lasts. Not for a day, not for a century, but across the whole span of human history. War after war, blood on lands where people once prayed for peace, children born into suffering before they ever learn what hope even is. And in the middle of all of it, a question echoes in the minds of millions, sometimes quiet, sometimes furious. If God is all-powerful and loving, why does he not end all of this immediately? Pause for a second. Do not rush to answer. Do not rush to quote doctrine or familiar lines. Be honest with yourself. How many times have you looked at this world and asked, is God silent? Is he delaying, or worse, has he abandoned us? When evil repeats itself, when those who harm others keep going while the innocent collapse, that question stops being theology. It becomes a cut in the human soul. The scariest thing is not Satan. The scariest thing is the moment people begin to doubt God himself, not because they have no faith, but because they have been hurt too much. And right there, many people unconsciously arrive at a dangerous conclusion, that this world is stuck in a balanced tug-of-war between good and evil, that God and Satan are like two opposing forces, neither strong enough to end the conflict. A universe where light and darkness are equals, where evil exists because it is necessary. But what if that is a lie? What if that entire assumption is a distorted picture people have stared at for so long they no longer question it? What if the long life of evil does not prove God's weakness at all, but exposes something deeper, more unsettling, and far greater? The truth is this: God has never been in an equal war. He does not stand before Satan as a rival measuring strength. He does not wait to see whether he will win. And if you believe evil exists because God is not strong enough to remove it, then maybe you are judging his power by a very human standard: fast, reactive, emotional. The issue is not whether God can destroy Satan. The issue is this: what would be destroyed along with Satan if God did it right now? And this is where the story starts to feel uncomfortable, not easy to hear but impossible to avoid. Before evil became an idea, it was a choice. Before suffering appeared, freedom was given. And before people begin blaming God for his silence, they often forget that this silence may be protecting the most precious thing God ever gave creation: the ability to choose. We often imagine God's love as removing every danger. But there is another kind of love, deeper and far more risky. A love that honors freedom even when that freedom is abused. A love that does not control through fear, does not rule through destruction, and does not force obedience through instant power. And it is exactly this kind of love that makes the existence of evil a painful question instead of an easy answer. Maybe God does not end evil immediately, not because he is slow, but because he sees what we cannot yet see. Maybe what we call delay is actually part of a deeper plan, where truth must be fully revealed, where every choice must be exposed, and where justice is no longer a reflex, but a final declaration before the entire universe. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained. If you have carried hard questions, doubts you were afraid to say out loud, and deep struggles about God, evil, freedom, and justice, then you are in the right place. What you are about to hear is not meant to comfort your emotions cheaply. It is meant to open a perspective that forces you to rethink the assumptions you have lived with. But before we go further, if these questions feel personal to you, subscribe and walk with Prophetic History Explained. Your support is what drives us to keep digging into the kind of history, theology, and faith questions that not everyone dares to ask. Because sometimes, to find real light, people have to stare straight into the darkest places first. One of the most persistent illusions people have carried for centuries is the belief that this world is being torn apart by a balanced war between good and evil. That light and darkness stand at opposite ends of a scale, equal in power, equal in rights, and the future of history is still undecided. That illusion makes people afraid, exhausted, and confused. Because if God and Satan were truly equal, no one could be sure light would win. But the truth is completely different, and if you understand it correctly, it is both shocking and strangely peaceful. There is no equal war between God and Satan. From the beginning, this was never a clash between two matching forces. This is not the story of two kings fighting for the throne of the universe. This is the story of an absolute creator and a creature who walked away from the source of life. Satan was never the necessary opposite of God. He is not darkness created to balance light. He is not some negative force required for the universe to function. That is a story humans tell to make evil feel more reasonable, more acceptable. But in spiritual reality, evil is not a being equal to goodness. It is absence. It is distortion. It is a bend away from the original order. When a creature turns away from God, the first thing it loses is not power, but life. Satan did not become stronger by rebelling. He became emptier. He did not enter a war to seize the universe. He stepped out of order, out of light, and in that very moment his end was decided. Satan's defeat is not waiting in some future battle. It happened the instant he chose pride instead of obedience. So why does evil still feel so powerful? Because people look at history through the eyes of the victim. When you are the one being harmed, the one doing the harm always looks like they are in control. When you are standing in darkness, light feels far away. But that feeling does not reveal ultimate reality. It only reveals where you are standing. God does not need to rush into a fight to prove he is stronger. He does not need to destroy instantly to confirm his authority. His silence is not weakness. It is the expression of a power that is not threatened. Only the insecure need to react immediately. Only those afraid of losing control need to prove strength through violence. Satan still exists not because he is winning, but because he has already lost the most important thing, the ability to decide the ending. He can distract, harm, and create chaos, but he cannot write the final chapter of history. And that is the difference people often miss. Influence is not sovereignty. The ability to cause pain is not the authority to determine the future. When you view history through that lens, you start to understand why Scripture never describes God as trembling before darkness. He does not defend himself. He does not negotiate. He does not wait to see who wins. The image of a balanced war reflects human fear far more than it reflects God's reality. The problem is this: people judge power by speed and destruction. Whoever breaks things faster, whoever creates greater fear is seen as stronger. But God's power does not operate by that logic. His power is not shown by instant erasure. It is shown by holding order steady even when that order is challenged. And because there is no equal war, Satan's continued existence does not shake God's throne. It exposes a hard truth, but an essential one. God is stable enough to allow rebellion to exist temporarily without threatening the final victory. Only an absolutely sovereign God can do that. When you understand this, fear starts to change shape. Instead of fearing evil as an unstoppable force, you begin to see it as a limited reality, contained, framed, and moving toward an end. And right there, the question, why has God not acted, begins to be replaced with a deeper one. What is God preparing that is greater than immediate destruction? Because if evil is not equal, if victory is already certain, then delay is no longer evidence of failure. It becomes evidence of a plan beyond human impatience. And that is when we are forced into a deeper layer of thought, where justice, freedom, and the purpose of history must be rebuilt from the ground up. if God has no equal rival, if victory is not threatened, then the next question is no longer who is stronger. The question becomes, why does God still allow history to continue like this? Why not close it the moment rebellion appears? Why not end everything before suffering spreads? The answer is not about power. It is about the way God understands justice and freedom, two things humans like to separate, but which cannot be separated in His plan. Humans are used to reflex justice. If something is wrong, punish it now. If something is dangerous, remove it immediately. For us, speed often feels like fairness, but God's justice does not run on urgency. He does not react. He judges. And judgment, in its fullest meaning, is not only punishment. It is the declaration of truth all the way to the end, before the outcome is sealed. Here is something people rarely say out loud. Spiritual beings do not disappear the way physical bodies do. They do not break down the way humans think of death. So destroying immediately is not only a question of power, but of moral order. In that order, no being is erased before the truth of its choices is fully displayed. God does not erase history. He allows history to speak all the way through. But deeper than justice is the hardest thing for many people to accept: free will. Not freedom as a slogan, but real freedom, with a cost, with the ability to wound and the risk of tragedy. God did not create beings programmed to obey. He did not design angels or humans as machines that only follow commands. He gave them the ability to choose, because without choice, there is no love. This is the key point many people miss. If God gives freedom, but the moment that freedom is used to rebel, He instantly destroys the one who chose wrongly, then freedom only exists in theory. That is not choice. That is a hidden threat. You are free as long as you do not use it in a way I dislike. That is not the love of a father. That is the control of someone afraid of losing power. God is not afraid of losing power. He is stable enough to allow freedom to exist, even when it is abused. And right here, many people stumble, because they confuse God allowing something with God approving it. Those are not the same. Allowing is honoring His own design. Approving is agreeing with the act. God does not approve rebellion, but He does not betray the gift of freedom He gave. So God's justice does not remove freedom to protect order. He protects order by letting freedom reveal itself fully, so that when judgment comes, no excuse remains. No one can say they did not understand the consequences. No one can say they were forced, and no one can say God acted unfairly. That is why what people call delay is actually the space of choice. Time is not only waiting. Time is where decisions form, motives surface, and roads split left or right. If history closed too early, truth would not have had time to show itself, and justice carried out on incomplete truth would never be perfect justice. Maybe the most uncomfortable realization is this: God does not act to calm us immediately. He acts to make everything right forever. And those are not always the same. The immediate peace we crave sometimes must give way to a longer, deeper process, where love is tested and freedom is proven real or fake. And this raises a personal question for every individual. If God respects freedom enough not to destroy rebellion instantly, then He also respects your freedom. He does not force you to love Him. He does not compel you to believe. He does not manipulate you through fear of being erased. He lets you choose, and He lets you live with the weight of that choice. And in that frightening respect, a truth begins to emerge. God is not delaying because He is uncertain. He is protecting the one condition that makes love meaningful. Freedom can create suffering, but a world without freedom would never know real love. And for God, a world without love, even if it is stable, is not victory. There is a crucial moment many people never stop to consider deeply. If Satan is truly losing, if he does not have sovereignty, if victory is not in his hands, then what is the real role of evil in history? Because even without ultimate authority, evil still exists, still wounds, still leaves real scars on people and on the world. The answer is not how strong evil is, but whose hands it is ultimately placed in. Evil does not operate in a lawless vacuum. It does not write the rules. It does not choose the ending. It moves through history like someone bound by an invisible rope, able to thrash, able to cause pain, but unable to cross the limits that have been set. What terrifies people is not evil's true power, but the fact that they see its consequences without seeing the boundaries around it. God does not need to remove evil immediately to control history. He controls history by forcing even what opposes him to serve a purpose larger than itself. That idea can feel offensive, even rebellious, that evil, though not approved, is still pulled into a plan it cannot destroy. Not because God needs evil, but because God is sovereign enough that evil cannot derail him. When you look back through the story of redemption, a pattern starts to appear again and again. What is used to destroy becomes the place where truth is revealed. What is meant to weaken becomes the test of faithfulness. What is thrown to spread despair becomes the soil where hope grows. Evil does not disappear, but it keeps losing the right to define the meaning of what it causes. Temptation, for example, does not exist to prove human weakness. It exists to reveal what is truly ruling the heart. Pressure does not automatically destroy faith. It exposes what that faith is built on. Betrayal is not only the act of one person turning away. It is the moment loyalty in others is brought into the light. And suffering, though never good in itself, becomes the place where people are forced to face questions they usually avoid when life is comfortable. Satan does not control these processes. He cannot design the outcome. He can only act within the space God allows. And the irony is this: every time he acts, he unintentionally reveals more clearly what he wants to hide. He wants chaos, but deeper order emerges through it. He wants to break faith, but when faith is tested, its real value is proven. None of this makes evil harmless. Pain is still pain. Tears are still tears. But it completely changes how we understand power. Real power is not the ability to cause suffering. Real power is the ability to direct the meaning of suffering. Only God can do that. Satan can trigger events, but he cannot decide what those events will ultimately say in the final story of history. And here, something practical begins to speak to the listener today. If even the strongest opposing forces cannot escape the framework of God's sovereignty, then your personal storms are not outside that framework either. The things you do not understand, the losses that make you ask, "Why me?" are not proof that your life has been abandoned. They may be part of a process whose meaning has not been revealed yet. People often want God to intervene by removing what hurts them immediately. But God often intervenes by refusing to let it become meaningless. That difference matters. A world without suffering might feel comfortable. But a world where suffering cannot destroy purpose, cannot twist truth, and cannot seize the right to write the ending, that is a redeemed world. In this view, evil is no longer the main character. It becomes a passive element, dragged into a current it cannot control. It wants the story to end in despair, but the story keeps moving toward light. It wants to close the door of hope, but hope opens on a deeper level. And that reveals the most terrifying truth for evil itself. It is not only losing, it cannot stop the one thing it hates most: redemption. When you see it this way, you no longer need to ask whether evil will win. The question becomes, what is being formed out of what looks like it is destroying everything? And the answer does not come instantly. It comes over time. layer by layer, awakening by awakening. But once you see it, you cannot return to the old way of seeing. Because then evil is no longer at the center of the story. The center belongs to a plan larger, steadier, and unbreakable. When people think of judgment, they usually picture punishment. They picture endings, destruction, a door slammed shut with no return. But in God's view, judgment has never been only a period at the end of a sentence. Judgment is the moment truth is restored to its rightful place. It is when what has been bent is made straight. It is when history, after so many painful spirals, finally finds a foundation strong enough to stand. Satan will be judged. That is unavoidable, but what matters is this: his end is not the center of the story. The center is what God is doing with all creation after every choice has been exposed, every mask has fallen, and no one can say they did not know, were not warned, or were not given a chance to turn back. God does not delay judgment because he is uncertain. He delays because he is building an ending strong enough that it will never need rewriting. An ending where justice leaves no residue of unfairness, and love is not mistaken for weakness. When judgment comes, it is not a reaction to rebellion. It is the summit of a long process in which everything has been given time to reveal what it truly is. In that process, Satan is not a temporary winner. He is a prisoner awaiting a sentence, not because there is not enough evidence, but because the sentence must be declared in full light before the whole universe. When that happens, there will be no argument, no doubt, no unanswered questions. Every choice will stand where it belongs, and every consequence will be undeniable. But if the story ended there, it would still feel cold. What makes this story different is not the collapse of evil, but what is rebuilt after that collapse. God does not only want to remove rebellion, he wants to heal what rebellion has wounded. He does not only want to end history, he wants to complete it in a way where no wound is ignored. This is what many people miss. They think God's victory means evil disappears. But God's true victory is that evil does not get the final word. It does not get to define humanity as hopeless. It does not get to rewrite the meaning of suffering. It does not get to steal the future from those who were crushed by it. In that light, judgment is not the day of terror. It is the day of clarity. The day confusion is stripped away. The day questions finally find a voice. The day those who suffered no longer have to wonder whether their pain was meaningless. Because in the full light of truth, not a single tear is treated as wasted. Satan was not destroyed at the beginning, not because he deserved mercy, but because history must be completed in a way that does not twist love. If evil were erased too early, people might obey out of fear. But they would never learn to love without coercion. God does not want a kingdom full of people who are silent because they are terrified. He wants a kingdom of people who have walked through choice, faced consequence, and freely chosen the light. And right here, the message hits life today. Because if God is guiding history toward a restored ending, then your life is not being left behind. What is broken in you is not proof that you are too far gone to be healed. It may be the very place where restoration is quietly happening, even if you cannot see the outcome yet. God's victory is not a single explosion that burns out. It is a steady current, long, patient, unstoppable, moving through rebellion and suffering and finally bringing everything back to its rightful place. Satan is not forgotten. He is being held for an ending he cannot escape. But while he waits for judgment, God continues doing what he has always done. Calling people out of darkness, healing what is shattered, and turning lives that seem meaningless into part of a larger story. When everything closes, what remains is not the roar of evil, but its silence. A silence not because it was strangled, but because it has nothing left to say. Truth stands, justice is completed, and love The love that accepted the risk of freedom from the beginning is finally seen in its full light. From that, a clear lesson is placed before every person living today. If God is patient with history, then He is patient with you. If He does not rush to erase creation's rebellion, then He does not rush to slam the door on your weakness, your failure, or your confusion. What He waits for is not instant perfection, but a sincere choice. Even if it comes late, even if it comes through struggle and doubt. Applied to everyday life, this invites us to change how we view hardship and suffering. Instead of only asking, well, why is this happening to me? Maybe the better question is, who am I being invited to become in this moment? Instead of treating suffering as proof you have been abandoned, see it as part of a process where meaning has not yet fully surfaced. That does not erase the pain, but it prevents the pain from becoming meaningless. And that is the thin line between despair and hope. Finally, if there is one thing you should carry with you after this video, it is this. Evil does not get the final word, not in history, not in the world, and not in your life. The final word belongs to truth, to justice, and to love, the love that dared to accept the risk of freedom from the very beginning. If you want to keep exploring deeper stories of history, theology, and faith like this, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can learn, reflect, and widen our perspective on questions that not every place dares to ask. And do not forget to subscribe, so you can support Prophetic History Explained in creating more honest, meaningful, and deeply researched content in the videos ahead.